of reflected back on our time when we were about to graduate, and how things were very similar looking for us, right? It was, it was pretty, it was a pretty bad panic mode, and people took it very differently. Like everybody was pretty uh, badly impacted with student loans in place, with this and that, and career plans are completely shattered, etc. It was a tough time for most of us, and that's why I thought that it makes sense to get us together and share whatever we experienced through. I'm not sure if we'll. So I don't think we will have specific, precise, prophetic answers to all of you. But the idea here is to broadly give you some sense of what we went through and how, when we look back now, 12 years, 11 years ahead, um, how the world is similar and different now, right? Uh, Thank you so much for putting up the questions. Some of the questions are definitely very interesting. Without diluting a lot of questions, we kind of segregated the questions in a bunch of themes. There are a bunch of themes that we could see in most of the questions. So we're not going to pick up specific questions, at least immediately. We are going to go through the broad themes that we identified across all the questions. And once that is done, once you've covered a good bunch of these questions, these themes, then we'll open it up to all of you, and please feel free to ask any kind of questions. Right? Let me just broadly, what we saw across all of the questions. Broadly, a lot of you are curious to know about learning from 2000. What was different? Number two, what are the immediate burning problems to address, which is the career, the career start questions. How do I start my career in this pressing times? And these are ranging from job versus higher studies, job versus entrepreneurship, to loan, to low CPI, to impact on salary, impact on placements, etc. Then long-term impact as to how do I navigate, even if I'm able to handle this currently, what are the learnings that I can take away from the current scenario so that it can help me in my long-term journey, in my long-term career. And finally, a very pertinent problem, which I think today we have a word for it, but honestly, during our time, we didn't have a word. At least a lot of us felt it, but we didn't have a word for it, which is imposter syndrome, the trouble and the feeling of not being good enough, right? How to cope with it, and what can you potentially do about it, right? So these are the broadly four topics. I'll be your host in those. Oh shit, that's Sajid Khan. I'll be your host for today's session. For those who do not know, so yes, I run Pragmatic Leaders right now. I was at Oyo earlier. I have had a little more entrepreneurial background, and right from college times, I was. So now let me just spill some of the beans about the three of us. I think that will give some perspective about everything that we're going to talk now. So right from college times, I was very clear that I'm going to become an entrepreneur. Jobs and etc. was not something that attracted me, because I always felt that the world has to be meritocratic, the world has to be a level playing field, and it should not come from, it should not stem from where you're coming from, what kind of education you got. I could clearly see that people who were privileged before entering IIT, they had a very different perspective, they had a very different exposure, and that's why they were able to take decisions in a very different way as compared to other people who were not as privileged, right? And I felt that as a problem, and that's why I couldn't adjust myself in job world at all. And hence, I took a very different path than a lot of our my classmates. 2008, starting up was not the cool thing to do. Was the worst thing to do. Like people who don't get a job, they go to startups. That was the idea. Uh, but anyway, I was like, I'm cool with that. Right, Ankit, can you quickly share your thought process, thought journey, etc.
Sure. Thanks, Tali. And I think if we talk about Tali and his interest and how he got up, we will take entire 1 year, 1 hour of this session, right? So, but I would encourage Tali to share bits of his thought process more as we go on, right? So a little bit about me. I'm Ankit. I started like my college as a 7 pointer and ended as high 8 pointer. So this was the time, like in IIT in second year, third year, I realized that I actually am interested in metallurgy and material science, and got really interested in education, right? But in the engineering field, and the thought process. which I was going through when I was sitting in placements was whether I should go for higher studies, do PhD, or go for a job. Um, and PhD seemed a little bit longer commitment to me, and I was not ready for that at that point of time. 2008 crisis had nothing to do with that decision, so I decided that I should go for job. When I decided that I wanted to go for job, there were two options for me: either go in technical job or go in consulting. Consulting was one of the field which I had in mind. Unfortunately, I didn't get selected in consulting jobs. The pipeline was pretty dry during our placement seasons, and Tata Steel, which used to come in February, came in December 13th. So that was a difference in placement season during our time. Like a technical core job, which used to come in January, February, came in December, early December, and I got placed in Tata Steel. Right, did 2 years, spent 2 years in research in steel making. Then I decided to move to business side and did my MBA because I was really interested in sales. I then spent around 2.5 years in 3M in sales, and since then I've been in Google for last 4.5 years now in partnerships team at Google. Yeah, so that's a brief about me. So I've shifted from research, from thinking about PhD, to hardcore sales, to now partnerships. So I can share some of the experiences and how I went about deciding that why I was changing the careers.
Correct. I think so. No, so Ankit and me were in the same hostel, and knowing Ankit from day one, I can tell you for a fact when he started making switches, I was like, "Bhai, ye wahi banda hai na?" Because I could have never imagined this guy to get into sales and partnerships and stuff because he was a hardcore nerd. Like he is the person who used to teach me, right? So he was a hardcore nerd for me. By the way, both of them used to teach me, right? किसी ने first year, second year पढ़ा, किसी ने third year, fourth year पढ़ा. Ashok, what about you?
Yes, yes. Hi guys, I'm Ashok Rajani, and my story, at least in the start, is somewhat similar to Ankit. In my third year, fourth year, I was clear that I don't want to do a PhD because I didn't want a 5 year long commitment. That was simply out of the equation. The choice was between doing a master's in aerospace versus going for a job right away, and I applied for both. I wanted to keep both options open. Unfortunately or fortunately, the master's thing, although I got admits, I did not get admits in the university of my choice, and there was no funding, right? So that made it clear for me that I had to take up the job. And I had gotten a decent enough consulting job, not the top tier consulting firm, but something that was still consulting. And consulting was one of the options I was looking at primarily because of the variety and diversity of work that you get to do there. So I took that up. I said, let's at least try it for a year and see how things go. And even at that time, I wasn't sure. So keeping my options open, I applied again for a master's, got way better universities this time around. Things had started picking up again. So, I got a couple of admits from the top 5 universities, but again, there was no funding. And at that point in time, I decided, I've done this job for 1 year and I'm sort of liking doing it. It involved a lot of analytics, it involved a lot of thinking. And I didn't want to make that commitment where I'm taking up a significant amount of loan and I don't see a future where I'll be able to repay it in a short period of time. It puts me under tremendous stress, under tremendous pressure to then do something which I may not always want to do. Right. So then I completely gave up the option of master, continued my journey in analytics, want to get into a better firm, better job, did my MBA, got into AT Carney, where again my role was purely analytics consulting, got much deeper expertise, different types of clients, variety of work. And that's when I realized that, if I want to get into a more managerial kind of a role, more senior leadership kind of a role, analytics alone is not going to take me there, right? As in when I started speaking to people who've gone through that same journey, I realized that moving to a more general consulting role would be a better option if senior leadership is something I'm aiming for. And that is when I decided to switch to BCG and got into a more technical or a traditional consulting role rather than analytics consulting role. I've been here for about 4.5 years, so really enjoying the work that I'm doing. The reason which I had gotten into consulting for, the diversity of work, the kind of learning that I get, it's still going strong even as of today. It's been we were just reflecting back. It's been about 11 years since we've been working. At least for me, it's 11 years because there was 1 year of MBA, right? So it's been 11 years I've been working, and luckily I'm still able to tick the boxes for which I joined this profession. So happy to be here, and happy to share some more details as and when we go along the points that Talvinder mentioned.
Awesome. So I think the theme or the thread that stitches all of these things together is I belong to more of a bring your own career BYOC category, where I wanted to be the owner of my drive in all sense possible. I'll do whatever I feel like. I got out of the college. So for those who know or they don't know, I was so in Singh, the dance club was created by me. I mean, not me alone, but yeah, we three, four, five of us. The AIDS is also something which I created. At that time, I didn't know that this is called entrepreneurship. It was more like a career that I wanted to fulfill. Got out of college, did my first startup, did my second startup, sold both of them, did two jobs, got bored, launched my third venture. So I belong to this category. Ashok went through his own journey of staying in consulting, going through the track, and ultimately landing up in a top four consulting firms. And Ankit has gone through his own journey of transformation itself, from being a 7-pointer to 9-pointer to figuring out कि studies करनी है कि sales करना है करते करते, right? So I guess between the three of us, we'll be able to cover a good variety of scenarios that we have gone through and we have seen happen. Let me start with the first theme, which is learning from 2008, right? So 2008 and 2020, the difference between the two, if I can summarize, and I'll open up to Ashok and Ankit for this. The summary, in my opinion, is very simple. That 2008, the industry and the economy didn't have money on it. The money had dried up. It had vaporized, right? In 2020, people are cautious. They are scared. And that's why the spending has been reduced to only the essentials, right? The money has not vaporized yet. And there's no, at least right now, there's no indication that the money will go away from the market and the companies will die down. Right? 2008 was dead. And I remember at that time speaking to people who had seen 2000, that they were like, "Hey, this is nothing. We have seen the worst." So I guess that's part and parcel of life. That whatever you have seen yourself, you always feel that is the worst thing. But at least between the two, 2008 and 2020, both of them are bad. Both of them are unprecedented. But at least in one, there is some money in the market. The market still has some liquidity. 2008 didn't have liquidity. That's why the companies had completely shut off. Which कोई नहीं सकता. Right? Ashok and Ankit, what do you think?
I absolutely agree with the broader sentiment here. That it's not that there is no liquidity in the market, and this time around there is enough and more for every company to also reflect back on, because most of the companies have gone through both 2000 and 2008, right? So they are better prepared to at least know what things worked, what things didn't work. And obviously, if you sort of look at a de-averaged view, right, there will be certain industries which will get more impacted than others, and that is what we just need to watch out for, right? And if you look back again, all of the different for some strong candidate from how many you guys watch Formula One. Very there is this
of uncertainty, and people who had money also were not spending it, right? So companies are very cautious about how to go to market. But I think right now what is happening is there are a lot of industries who are doing really good because they are adapting to the new normal, right? One example is gaming. One example is edutech, delivery services, right? There are some sectors which are doing phenomenally, and the baseline for these sectors will shift dramatically, right? I was just reading a study where the laptop sales is supposed to hit a new baseline because more and more people will now work from home. Companies will buy more laptops so that they can give to their employees. So there are a lot of industries which will hit a new baseline after this crisis. So I think the difference we have to realize, but there would be differences. For example, say there is a anti-globalization sentiment now, right? Now how this will play out, the idea in 2008 was, okay, let's go for further studies, because by the time this 4 year program or 2 year program would be done, there would be economy would be in good shape again, and then things would be better. But right now I think there needs to be more caution, because if there is anti-globalization sentiment, how it will play out in terms of visas is very can be very different. Now it's you need to take a more judicious call that whether you want to take that risk or not, right? So we will discuss more as we go on, but I think like you need to understand that what was different in 2008 and how 2020 crisis is like way different from that crisis.
Absolutely. I think before we move to the next segment, I think just to give you a sense, things are always going to be uncertain. Things are always going to be unpredictable, right? Like think about Airbnb, for example, right? Airbnb took 12 years to become a decacorn, right? It took 6 weeks to literally collapse to the ground. And everything is done for them. Now they have to wait for 1.5 years for something to emerge back again. Same goes with Oyo, right? And Oyo story I've personally seen, I've personally built, I've been part of their entire rebuild. Uh, right. Similarly, dot-com burst when happened, there was somebody called, you must have heard of him, SoftBank's founder, right? Mr. Sun. So he was, before dot-com burst, he was the second richest guy in the entire world. He was the second richest guy. He was making about $1.54 billion every day. When dot-com burst happened, he went bankrupt, literally in that 2 month, 3 months period of time. Right? So things can go uncertain and can impact you so badly. The point is, what are the things that we can actually do which can ensure that you are sustained and you can go in the long run? So on that same thesis, so while this is all good, like this is all good high-level fund days, what are the core fund days, Ashok and Ankit, that you will suggest? Like somebody had asked, what practical advice, not consolation, okay, to your younger self would you have been grateful for? What's the advice in one line?
Uh, I can go first. So I think the first advice is to accept that this is a pandemic, right? This is like once in a century kind of event, which everybody is going through. It's not only you; it's everybody who is going through. Times are tough for everybody. It is challenging for everybody, right? So I think the first thing to do is to accept that things will not be normal. Things would be different. You cannot have the same things going the way you planned earlier. You need to make new plans. You need to maybe work harder to achieve the same things which you planned earlier, right? So I think the first thing is to accept and then be the player, right? And have things in control, that whatever decisions you want to take based on the knowledge or based on the understanding which you have of the market or your career goals, like how do you be the player and then take those decisions. So like this is a short summary, and we can discuss more after Ashok shares his one line summary, and then we can share more thoughts on
Sure. I think you really hit the nail on the head, Ankit. I just want to add a couple of additional points, right? Remember, guys, you are in your early 20s right now. And for you guys, the entire career, hypothetically assuming you guys retire at the age of 60, there is 38-year career, and you guys have not even started your first year journey, right? So if you look at it from the longer term perspective, this will be a minor blip. As Ankit was saying, this is a once in a 100-year kind of a sort of a event that has happened. So do not let it deter your longer term goals. Do not let it deter your motivation. This is the time for you to go back to the drawing board, make sure you are better prepared when things are coming back to the normal. So I think that is one very big thing to keep in mind. The second thing is you always need to be flexible in this point in time and be a little more cautious in your approach. And obviously, if you talk to all three of us, we may have a different point of view, but at least my personal point of view is being flexible and being cautious in your approach will help you be prepared for different kinds of eventualities that will come in. None of us or no one can actually tell you, right, how long this crisis is going to be. 6 months, 60 years. I'm just, to showcase the extreme, I'm saying it could even be as long as 60 years. None of us can tell it. None of us have a crystal ball where, we can just look into it and tell you the future. So no one can predict what's going to happen. Hence, it's better to be prepared for all different types of eventualities, right from the best case scenario to the worst case scenario, and making sure you have a long term objective in mind, which even your short term goals are making you take it. They're taking you towards it. May not be the most optimal path, but it is still the path which is taking you towards that long term goal.
Yeah, I can just add to it. Like I completely echo what Ashok said, and that when you see yourself after 30 years or 40 years, and you reflect back on your career, like I know we have spent only 10, 12 years right now, but that's the advice which we also get from our seniors, right? That when you reflect back, actually it doesn't matter that whether your promotion was 2 year delayed, whether your first job was not that great, and actually right now also I can reflect that, right? 2 years I spent in research. That has nothing to do with what I am doing currently, but it is the experience which you derive from there which helps you throughout your career journey, right? And I really like that quote which Ashok said, right? That you can overtake 15 guys in a rainy day. So I think that's the kind of like mindset. If you have that mindset, it's great. One framework, I know Ali, this is a Gyan framework, but I think it is very people might for who will. So if you have the right attitude and of your choices, then that's the most important thing to go for. And this is the thing which companies also look for, right? I think a lot of people ask that what do companies look for? How do you prepare for placement? I think knowledge and skill are still primary things. What you need to focus on is the right attitude which you need to have to where you want to go. So I think that is really important.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Ankit. I think to summarize this particular segment, I think there are 3-4 things to bother about. One, 2008 and 2020, the see, any kind of crisis kind of plays in a similar way, in the sense that companies get cautious, jobs get reduced, the jobs also start shifting. The heroes become side heroes, sidekicks, and the sidekicks become heroes. So all of this transitions and phases happen. In 2000s, for example, computer science became the hottest job to get in, versus 90s, out of IIT Bombay, chemical was the hottest department to be in. So that shifts, etc., etc., will always happen. But the point right now where you are in, you can bucket yourself into 2-3 parts. One, are you absolutely clear that this is what I want to do, and this is the reason why I want to do this? So just don't say it because your friend and your girlfriend has told you that, but rather you have very clear idea as to this is what I want to do, and these are my reasons, right? You can clearly connect with it. If that is the case, great. Are you in that bucket or not? Number one. Number two, do you be cool or be okay with the fact that I do not know what I want to do? So I'll rather like to be in those positions where I can explore and get exposure of multiple things, right? That's perfectly okay. So telling yourself that I do not know my journey is that's perfectly okay. Don't worry yourself or don't kill yourself simply because, hey, my friend has already figured out he has to do this, and my friend is doing higher research and blah blah blah, and I have no idea. That's perfectly okay. That's perfectly okay. Everybody has their own journey. They'll figure it out. Number two was about how was the scene in 2008. It was bloodshed. Like I said, the jobs were not there. The companies were not there. At least right now, jobs are there. Just that the popular companies are not so popular anymore, etc. So it was a pretty bloodshed. It is not as bad as in 2020. And people are trying to. The bigger problem here is that companies are trying to figure out a new way of working. Right? They have to figure out how to work in a digital first environment when they have been traditional in all of their ways. So it's going to be a little more tricky. That is the difference. How many companies came? I think the placement rate at that time, at least from the colleges, from the college level, I think was around 60% or somewhere around that, if I remember it correctly. Ankit, you might correct it, or Ashok, you can give me that number. But it was not good at all. It was about 60%, 50-60%. People were obviously struggling.
Yeah, so I remember like in 2007 placements, in December, up to December 20th or something, almost 80% of the batch was placed.
Yes.
Very, very few companies then came after that. The placements went in February, but for people who wanted selected jobs or selected segments. In our time, I remember in January also we were not even 50% of the batch. So numbers will look good. It will become tough, and I've seen people cry. I've seen people get devastated. But I think the right thing to keep in mind is that what is the long term goal which you have, and what will help you achieve that long term goal.
Correct. So with that in mind, let's jump to the second segment, which is the most burning questions that a lot of you have, which is how do I find this is all good and long term I'll figure it out, blah blah blah. Now what do I do, right? What should I do now given the current scenario, right? Now I believe some of you are in first year, some of you are in second year, third year, fourth year. So obviously your mileage is going to vary. But obviously the fourth year folks and third year folks have a survival issue or existential problem as to what exactly to do now. So we have broken down into three parts. Essentially, you have three things to pick up from. Either you are going to take up a job, or entrepreneurship, or higher studies, or do an MBA. Right? These are the four broad questions that we observed in all of your questions. So, what is your Ashok? What do you think about taking up a job? I remember our discussion at that time. So you were very clear about taking up a job, right? So in this current scenario, if job, why? Number two, how to approach now that there is not enough jobs in the market or companies are not that aggressively hiring. What do you think? What tactical advice would you give people so that they can decide on their own?
Yeah, so couple of points on that, right? Whether you should do a job or you should do research. I think you have to again tie it back to two things. One is what kind of background are you coming from? What kind of internships have you done? What kind of experience do you have? Is it more aligned with job? Is it more aligned with a higher studies kind of a equation? But at the core of it is something. What is the immediate? So as Talvinder said, either you are on one side of the spectrum where you know exactly what you want to do. If you know what you want to do, this question is not even for you. Then you don't even need to bother about it. When you're on the edge, you're trying to figure out what you want to do. You have to keep your options open. Try applying at both places. And I very clearly remember, my HOD at that time of aerospace department. I was talking to him and asking him, how should I think about, I have this option, I have these admits from these universities, whereas I have this job, and how do I sort of balance them out? Because essentially I'm comparing apples and oranges. So his point was very clear. He's like, you think which will elevate you as an individual better? Is it a better brand than IIT Bombay? Are you going to something which will make you a better person, which will make you learn things better, or are you actually demeaning your position just by accepting because you wanted to do a master's? You're okay accepting, university which is probably not the best ranked university. So his advice was take which is a better option at that point in time. If you still think masters is something you want to explore out, a year down the line you can apply again because that option is still open for you. And if the economy reopens, right? Absolutely. And you also then have a very different profile to apply. Everyone else who would apply would only have done research or some kind of an internship. You can say you've done research, you've done a 1 year job, and this is why now you want to do a PhD. So you will have more clarity, which will get also reflected in your essays, in your applications, and that will also have a very differentiated, candidature for you when you're applying for it. So, summarizing, keep your options open and make sure that you are not getting into something just because you fixated your mind, I want to do this, even though you're not getting something which is not, it's not worth getting into. So just keep those two things in mind.
Right. I think Ankit, what do you believe? Like, you took up a job in which was kind of you took up a job which was research, right? What do you think about this? And
Yeah.
what advice would you give to people?
Yeah. So I think it was not a very thought out decision that I wanted to go in Tata Steel. I was still open for consulting or tech jobs, right? So I would say that my decision was like as taking it as it comes. But the advice which I can give is that when you are thinking of taking job, echoing a lot of sentiments which Ashok said, that you need to be clear that what you are looking for right now. I would say that as I said, right, there are some sectors which are doing really great. So if are you looking for a particular sector or are you looking for a particular kind of role? So I would say if the times are tough right now, it's okay if you don't get into the desired brand or exact role which you wanted to go. But if you move in the right direction, then you are keeping your options open, and then you can move whenever you want, right? So I think like for me also, when I went to Tata Steel, I still had option that I can go for PhD 2 years later or a year later, right? So I think moving in the right direction is should be the aim, and not taking any decision which you thought that like, just not taking that decision because you thought you would take that decision earlier, right? The situation has changed, the parameters have changed, so you need to, I think about that what is that you would take out of that job or that role which you want to.
Correct. So basically, if you are not too sure about the job market as such, you are confused between should I start up, should I do higher studies, do a research, or do an MBA. If you're not absolutely clear about it, perhaps it will make more sense to at least position yourself in such a way that such a place where you can navigate in whichever path you wanted to go. Right? It's harder said than done, but then again, that will be a better strategy to position yourself so that you can navigate and have that agility in your future career. Right? Uh, Given the current scenario, does it make sense to take up an MBA, take up between the four options from whatever we have seen? Entrepreneurship, higher studies, MBA, job.
So elaborating more on the MBA bit of it. My personal take on that is you should not do an MBA till you have at least some amount of work experience, right? An MBA is about building managerial skills. If you have not even gotten exposure to that, not worked for at least 2 years, you wouldn't make the best of learning from your B school. So I would say focus on learning some skills now. MBA can always be done 2 years down the line, and that's you know uh, a fresher going into MBA versus an experienced personnel going into an MBA. There is a world of difference in the kind of learning that you can get from an MBA. So on the MBA front, I'm very clear. On masters or higher education versus job, I think that you will have to go by your gut feeling, right? No one can answer that for you whether which is a better option. It's more about what do you think where 2 years down the line, if you imagine yourself graduating from a master's with a master's degree from some university, or 2 years down the line, do you see yourself celebrating when you've gotten your first job promotion? Which would be a happy moment for you? I think if you position yourself that way, that may just help you think through, what are you more inclined towards. On the entrepreneurship bit, I think I'm not qualified enough to answer that. I would leave that to Talvinder to sort of touch upon that part.
Yeah, I think plus one to MBA thought the fact which you said, right, Ashok, that experienced person doing MBA has a lot of return. But I have a little differing point of view also, that what is your aim of doing MBA, right? If your aim is learning, then what Ashok said is absolutely right, and that's what I also did. I had 2 years of experience, and that was like I would say people who did not have any experience struggled to understand things, understand a lot of concepts. From learning point of view, it is essential to at least have 1 or 2 years of experience. I would say minimum 2 years. But if your aim is to get a brand name, but if your aim is to just get a tag that okay, tick mark that I've done this, then just go for MBA as soon as possible. So because I've seen people progress in life both ways. It's your call that what is your aim. Your aim is to get the best learning and best to get best out of MBA. Then go after experience. But if your aim is to just get a check mark done, then do it as soon as possible. Because then you don't need to wait for work X. But personally, I would also agree to Ashok that you should do it after work X so that you can make best out of it. In terms of doing for further studies at this point, as I wrote in the comment section also, I think it is a little tricky. My personal advice would be to wait and watch, because again there is an anti-globalization sentiment which is going on, right? If you have read Singapore's prime minister's speech, there was a lot of with a heavy heart he was saying that Singapore will have tough time as there is anti-globalization sentiment, right? And trade wars and going on, it might become little difficult. That's my personal take. Again, it depends on you, your view of things, that how you see economy will evolve or how you see things will evolve in future. But my view is it is little tricky. Wait and watch right now. If you can defer some of the decisions for a year, I think that's better, because right now movement across in global scenario is also restricted, right?
Correct. So I think if I have to summarize this small but important agenda, so we have 4 options in front of you. You can take up a job if at all you're in the 4th year, for example, or if you're early, then maybe you can take up an internship. Right? So you have internship, job, one option. You can go for higher studies, you can go for MBA, and you can do the trickiest and the riskiest of all, which is do a startup. Now, with respect to jobs are going to be, so like I said, jobs have shifted, number 1. Number 2, the companies who are still hiring or they're looking to hire, they're looking for people with jack of all trades or who can do multiple things together, because you can have more ROI, so to say, right? If you're earlier, you're not in the 4th year, for example, 3rd year, 2nd year, 1st year, pick up internships, but take them very sensibly, in the sense, do internships, but do it diligently. Number 1. Number 2, pick up those internships which can actually propel you towards your direction. So you're doing it simply because, hey, I have villa time, so I'm going to do something. If that is the case, sit at home, eat and go fat. Right? You're not going to get anything out of it. Instead of that, if you're doing an internship, do with the perspective, do I want to get into this domain or not? The best way to do is, for example, you're interested in e-commerce, do an internship with an e-commerce company. Discover whether you like it or not. If you don't like it, leave it, right? But yeah, do not burn the bridges. Okay, you don't like it, after 2 weeks you're like, tada, bye bye, I'm not going to even drop a message. That is very unprofessional. Don't do that, right? Take it up, spend 1 month. If you can't follow through it, leave it. That's perfectly okay. Second is, you want to take up something because you want to learn about some technology. So have that goal very clear in your mind when you're talking about internships, that why you want to do it. Don't do it simply because I'm going to get 5,000 rupees, so I'll be able to chill at Lakshmi. Don't do it for that. Okay. Let's talk about the second one, higher studies. Higher studies is very, very risky right now because visas are going to be very, very problematic. Till December, at least the visas and travel restrictions are going to make it very, very difficult for you. So perhaps you might end up spending a good amount of time applying and preparing and spending money, blah, blah, blah. And end of the day, the visas are not there. Or perhaps the visas don't open up. Even after you complete your higher studies, maybe you do not get the extension to actually find a job there, right? Which can put everything at risk. I know personally so many people in US who are now coming back, who are literally coming back after spending 5 years, 8 years, 10 years, 2 years in the States, right? So higher studies again is very, very risky, very, very tricky. And I'll rather have a wait and watch approach than actually going heads on in it. MBA, don't do it in my opinion, because it's not just about tax, it's also about the money and the time spent. So take 2 years, 3 years, spend some time gathering all the facts and getting some foundation in fund days, and then do MBA after that. Right? And personally, I'm against MBA. There are two MBA people. They will not like to. I'm personally against MBA. I don't think MBA adds
Me
anything.
too, me too. Plus one.
Okay, good. H5, H5. So, so MBA
I'm on
personally
the different
adds.
end of the spectrum here. I think
Yeah.
it is right for certain certain type of people.
Agreed.
So
Agreed. So MBA. So overall, if you look at the trend, MBA's value is depreciating. It is still not depreciated to that extent where it is ROI zero. It is ROI still there, but it's not as glamorous or as magic wand as you might imagine it to be. Okay. So you have to be very, very careful about what you're doing. Next comes some very pertinent problems, which is this is all okay if you have options in place. If you have very promising, for example, then what to do? Ashok.
I would say, see, I don't know. You would have heard different advice from different types of people when you would have entered NCT over the whatever 1 to 3 years that you have individually spent, right? A lot of people would say grades don't matter. Yeah, मतलब थोड़ो grades let's have time. A lot of people would say grades do matter. I am on the other side of the thing where I think grades do matter, and if I am a recruiter right now, right? So I will be mostly coming to IIT Bombay for recruitments, placements at the end of the year. Now, when a company is looking at candidates, right? All of you are from IIT Bombay, so all of you have cleared the JEE with differing ranks, different courses, etc. But you have all cleared JEE, so you meet the minimum threshold. How do I distinguish between people and see that who is good versus who is not good, right? Technically, yes, I could have a very elaborate interview process where I interview all 1,000 people on campus and then do a technical round and whatever kind of interviews and figure out. That's obviously very, very time consuming. So, what is the best way for me to see that someone is genuinely interested in applying to a BCG? Right? I will first look at grades because everyone knows grades is a good thing to have on your CV. Have people put in the efforts to get good grades so that their CV stands out? Or have people done something else which makes their CV stand out? Grades could be one thing. It's fine. If you don't have grades, have you done something else? Have you built some other skills which you can showcase in your CV, which make you, which differentiate you from the others? So if you don't have that, obviously getting a job is not going to be that easy in this scenario. But again, what I would say is if I look back post my MBA, I wanted to get a certain kind of job. I did not necessarily get the best job that I wanted. I got something else, but then that something else was still parallel to my end goal. And a few years down the line, I could make the switch. So you guys can also think about it. If you're not getting the job of your choice right now, that is okay. Have a parallel job in mind, which 2 years, 3 years down the line can still take you back on that track. You may spend an extra year compared to your batchmates who end up in the same job, but that is okay. In a 30-year long career, having 1 year extra, it's not going to change the game. And for all you know, you may do much better towards the latter part of your career, and you can overtake. So it's not a short term game. It's a much longer term game that you guys need to keep in mind. So take up whatever option is still closest to your end term and long term goal, but gives you the option of switching back to your original stated goal.
Correct. I think so. So there are two. Okay, so low CPI, no internship, and loan scenario. There are these are three actually Bermuda Triangle of problems that you have, right? So you have low CPI, for example. A bunch of you might not have like the best of the best. After all, 8 pointer, 9 pointers are 8 pointer, 9 pointer because so many 5 pointer, 6 pointers as well, right? So you have CPI problem. You will have not the best internships, for example, and plus a lot of you might have taken student loans as well, right? So obviously, if you just think about this, it must be creating a lot of panic. It is something to panic, something to worry, something to get anxious about. Um, I can share some of my thoughts here, very humbly. So I never enjoyed a very high CPI. I think the highest CPI was in the first year, I guess. Um, I'm not proud of it, or I would not say that this is what you should be doing. You should be chill about it. Doesn't matter. It does matter because having a CPI kind of gives you some sort of a safety net that yeah, something goes wrong, it's okay. If you are crazy like me, perhaps you will overlook all of this and you're like, I will make my own path and I don't care about all this. Uh, do it. I will not advise it. It's not easy. It's not easy. It's difficult, and you need to be very, very thick-skinned to be able to do that. But anyway, if you have low CPI, you have a loan. I had all of these things, right? I had an okayish internship. which kind of told me that I should not take up a job. So that was my only takeaway from the internship. Um, my suggestion would be go back. You are smart for sure. You are here in this crowd. You are smart for sure. That goes without saying. Okay. Go back to the drawing board. Look at your skills. What skills do you really have? Those skills are not about I can code or I can do this, I can do that. Perhaps that kind of that kind of is a skill that does matter. But there is something more deeper. For example, you are very persistent. You can beat against the odds in any scenario. You can rally people together. You can drive a certain agenda. You can do ABC. You can do PCQ, right? You can do all of these things. Look at some deeper of those skills that you have and see which kind of industries, which kind of jobs, which kind of scenarios you will be able to get in. Personally, in my opinion, I always I'm a big believer of building your own destiny and bringing your own building your own path, which basically means, in my opinion, is uh, in the current scenario, you can practically build whatever you want to. You can launch you are currently in college, you can actually pool a bunch of friends together, you can build out a product, launch it, experience it. If everything fails, that's perfectly okay. You will still be having a good a good resume point to talk about. If everything goes well, given this average smart quotient in the campus, there's a good chance it might scale very, very well. There are plenty of success stories in IIT Delhi, IIT Bombay, IIT Roorkee, IIT Guwahati, where people have come together and they have been able to build some incredible solutions together, right? So that is one thing I'll strongly recommend if you guys can pick up. But obviously, look at your risk appetite. Everybody will have different risk appetite. Number one. Number two, also look at do a small thought experiment. Okay? You like Ashok said in the very beginning, you have about 38 years of career, right? Adjusting to inflation, look at, even if you make an average salary every year, just look at how much you're going to make for the 38 years. What is the total compensation, that is total money that you can potentially make, and then keep only 20% of that as savings, because you will have savings of that much, right? Assuming you are average smart, you will also invest in few other investment class, right? You might do mutual funds, you might do some other investments. Together, what is the total corpus of money that you can actually make? Now, from this entire corpus of 38 years, let's say that turns out to be 5 crores, 10 crores, let's say adjusted to inflation. Um, Ultimately, how much of that are you willing to let go or you're willing to risk? 2 years, 5 years, 6 years, 3 years, 1 year, 1 month. Figure that out. And that will give you that risk appetite for yourself that, okay, I'm willing to experiment with my career for 1 year or half a year or 2 years, whatever the case is. Right? That might be a good experiment for you to run through. As far as the loan is concerned, honestly, if there are loans, I'll suggest not to take too many risks and just get done with it, because loan honestly is a big headache on your head as well as your parents' head. I had loan and I jumped into entrepreneurship. Thankfully, I was able to do decently well the first couple of years, 3 4 years, and I was able to get the loan off my head. But I know of other people who got sucked into it and they went on and on. It was a massive problem, right? So it is better to just get off the loan from your head and then think of anything else. Um, there are a few other questions that you asked, which is impact on salary and impact on placements. I think we have already covered that. Impact on salary is not going to be too much. It's going to be like 10%, 15% either other, but it's not going to be too much.
Tali, sorry. I want to add to your point, the point that you were making about your entire net worth, right?
Yeah.
There is a very good sort of metric I want to share. If you think about every individual's net worth, and if you measure it, let's say people who've retired now, if you measure their net worth, about 60 to 75% of their net worth is generated in the last 10 years of their job. It is not the first 30 years of your job that generates that net worth for you, right?
Right.
So keep that in mind. If your net worth is 10 crores, out of that, 6 to 8 crores would come only in the last 10 years of your corporate life. So you are right now in
Right.
a very low risk game from that perspective. That's why this is the time to explore. Money making will come. You will figure out a way, right? Obviously, as Talvinder mentioned, if you've taken loan, if there is a burning platform for providing, sort of amount of cash flow to your bank statement. Take a cautious decision. Have plan B always in mind, right? You will, as I was telling you earlier, you'll have to have options across the spectrum, best case scenario to worst case scenario. To plan for your worst case scenario, you'll assume a worst case scenario. But if a worst case scenario happens, you need to know what you are going to do in that scenario. You shouldn't be caught off guard thinking at that point in time. So keep that in mind as you put your options down on paper.
There are few. We are almost approaching the final few questions. Then there is a question about which sectors are hot or not. I think we have addressed some of those questions. So edtech is very hot right now. So think of all the digital first companies, or digital first sectors. E-commerce is hot, obviously. Edtech is hot, obviously. Finance is hot, obviously. So think of all the sectors which were digital first. They were digital native. They are the ones which are hot and which are running successfully. The sectors which do not have digital first or digital native experience, they are struggling a little bit. Logistics will always be good because people have to be shipped, goods have to be shipped, so something is going to happen. But that got disrupted a little bit in the midst right now. But I'm assuming it's going to recover by the end of this year. Ashok and Ankit, do you have anything? Gaming sector, by the way. Gaming sector is blowing.
Yeah.
It's entertainment sector, OTT is blowing like anything. It's incredible if you look at the numbers.
Absolutely. So if you think about it broadly, media by itself is doing very, very well because people are spending more time at home, more time on their devices, right? But broadly,
Right.
if you think about it, all discretionary spends are under stress right now. So anything with respect to discretionary spend, whether it is tourism related, travel related, or even things like buying furniture, consumer durables for your house, right? All those are going to come under the hammer. Even things like car, although there is a case to be built about saying auto industry is going to boom once once the restrictions etc are lifted because people would want the safety of their own cars rather than risking pooled travel etc. So all the pooled economy or the economy which did not have their own assets, that is going to be under a bit of stress. Airbnbs and Ubers kind of economy, but everything which is fundamental to spending, which is fundamental to consumers living their day-to-day lives, I think that those companies are going to keep booming. And as Talvinder said, digital natives will have an unfair advantage over companies which are not digital in this short term.
Right. There are okay. So let's go into. I hope we have covered a bunch of these questions. The next segment that we have is about long-term planning. So now, given the current short-term crisis that we have, and not so certain about the long-term prospects, how do you even plan the long-term? How do you even look beyond the current burning house that we have right now?
Okay, I can go first. So I think, as I said earlier, right, there would be different types of people who are very, who have a lot of thought that what do they want to do. And there would be people like me who would not have clear thought that what do they want to do in long term, right? But there would be moments in your career path where you will realize that, okay, this is something which you are interested in, right? And if you take right actions at that point of time to make sure that you move in the right direction to achieve that, it would help you a lot in long term, right? So one of the things which Tali was telling, right, that I started in research and then entirely moved to the business side, right? So I will share that turning moment for me that might help you also decide that what is the turning moment for you, right? So like when I was in Tata Steel, I saw that there were people who were coming to Tata Steel and selling industrial equipments, right? So they were selling blast furnace equipments, like big industry equipments. And when I interacted, although I was in research, so we were actually validating all the claims which they were making about those instruments. But I really liked talking to those people because they were doing a long-term sales. So they were doing a sales of like they were spending like 3 months, 6 months in sales of one equipment in one company, right? But that equipment was worth crores, so it was worth their time. So that really got me excited that okay, this is something which I am interested in, and I want to do some B2B industry sales. I joined MBA because of that. When I joined MBA, I realized everybody wanted to go in FMCG. and the whole sales and marketing is about FMCG. I was not able to connect to that. I did my internship in Britannia, realized, okay, मैं biscuit नहीं बेच सकता. Like, I cannot do that, right? I was amongst the last person to get placed in my MBA from SP Jain just because I didn't want to go in FMCG companies. I kept saying no, FMCG or telecom or any of the consumer segments, right? I was very clear that I wanted to go to B2B segment. So I think, and that really helped me. Starting 2.5 years after MBA in 3M gave me a lot of exposure to B2B sales, which I am able to use in my Google career, right? And again, the things which I was doing in 3M were not at all related to online world or digital world. And when I was interviewing for Google also, I clearly told that I don't know anything about ads or digital world, right? But still, the skills which I had in sales helped. So again, coming to that KSA framework, right? The skills or the attitude which you develop are much more important than the knowledge of that particular field. So like I had my career shifts 3 times till now, and I want to do another career shift now. And again, like it might be a completely different thing from what I'm doing currently. But if you have the right attitude in mind, that will help you along.
That's a very pertinent problem. I think the KSA framework. I think that is very useful. So knowledge. I think a lot of you are talking about that. I've done a course like this. I couldn't read all the chat, but that I've done an ABC course. I've done so and so course, so and so course. See, courses are available left, right, and center. Right. That's perfectly okay. Even if you've done that, that's pretty much like the entry ticket to play. That you are entered. You are allowed to enter this market. Okay, that's all that course allows you to do. Okay, nothing more. If you want to actually make money off the knowledge, you need to develop the skills and you need to develop that disposition to be able to build solutions around it. Right? Just don't believe in anybody who says I. By the way, I run a pretty successful product management institute, online institute. We were pretty much the first ones. And despite that, I can say that very confidently that any of the programs that are available online, whether it is Coursera or Udacity or whatever it is that you're doing, if you're just watching videos in them, you're not going to make money off that knowledge. Okay, even if you're just solving some of the assignments of those courses, that again is not going to help you. What is actually going to help you is applying that knowledge, applying that fundamentals into real world problems and seeing how they perform. Unless and until you go out of your comfort zone and do those things, you will not be able to get job basis that fact that I have done this certificate, see, I've done this Udacity course or I've done this Coursera course. That's not going to help you.
Yeah, okay. and to put a visual reference to what you are saying, essentially this is like a funnel, a converging funnel, right? At the start of it, you have whatever lakhs of students. Everyone may be interested in, let's say, doing AI ML, right? Sure, everyone is interested. How many of them have actually taken the effort to at least do a few courses of time? Then you start narrowing down the number of people who've actually done that. How many of them have done assignments and are actually learning from those courses rather than just doing the courses for the heck of ticking a box? That will further narrow down the field. How many of them have then gone ahead and applied that in some setting, as Tali was mentioning, right? So as you start narrowing down the funnel, you are getting into a much smaller core group of individuals, which makes sure that you are part of a much smaller subset. And the closer you are towards the end of the funnel, the better you are compared to people who are still at the start of the funnel. So your job should be towards getting into a more narrowed bunch of individuals where your skill sets are rare. They are not as spread out as I throw a stone and then I can find 10 people, or I call out a name and I find 10 people in a crowd who all know the same skills that you do. What is it that you have done differently, which is why I should hire you rather than someone else? That needs to come out very clear.
Correct. And I think this
I can't hear you. Are you speaking?
yeah. Am I audible?
Yeah.
You're audible now.
Yeah. Okay. So I was saying that I think this is. I mean, I echo sentiments of Ashok and this. I mean, in my academy also we say the same thing. You know that if you start looking at yourself as a talent product, that I am a talent who is going out in the market trying to sell my talent and my skill in exchange of a steady paycheck, annual steady paycheck. You're essentially selling your services in bulk against against a steady paycheck. That's what you're doing, right? It's important so when you start seeing yourself as a talent product, things become slightly easier to visualize, right? You're essentially looking at differentiating yourself against everybody else. What makes me different from everybody else that who might be applying at this place? And you will start identifying that okay, not all the companies are good for me. There are certain segment of companies that are good for me. There are certain kind of jobs that are good for me. There are certain kind of countries that are good for me. There are certain locations that are good for me. So when you start segmenting it down, perhaps you will discover that okay, perhaps going back to Jaipur and working in a technology driven product company will be the ideal thing for me, because I don't like the hustle bustle of the cities, for example, and I would rather like to be closer to my parents, closer to my hometown, and the paycheck is good, the payment is good, and I get to stay in my native place. Perhaps that is what drives you, right? And with COVID in place, I think that is going to happen even more prominently, right? So it's important to find your segmentation. This is something that you do in product management as well. You try to segment your users down. We do this in marketing, we do this in sales, we do this in product. And I personally believe that we should do this in HR or talent as well, where you have to segment it down, that what exactly is the segment of companies, segment of roles, segment of paycheck, and the city, location, etc., where you perfectly fit in and you would like to go there. Attack there, and most likely you will be the hero of the crowd there, instead of going into the crowd and trying to figure out what best you can do there. Two more questions here. What should be the ideal path an IIT Bombay graduate should follow for maximized learning? Working in a startup first, then a big corporate, or vice versa? Also thoughts about how to go about building a company in a highly competitive atmosphere. I think I can take some part of this. See, I think right now the intake of the entire campus is about 600 people or 800 people, I think.
I think it should be much more now.
Okay, let's say 1,000 people, right? 1,000 people are entering the campus every year, let's say, right? Out of 1,000 people, there are 64 people right now who are concerned enough. I'm assuming that these posters were put up everywhere. So out of this 1,000 people, there are 64 people who are concerned enough to actually spend a time on a Sunday evening to learn or to hear from some other people, right? This is one of the ways that you're maximizing your learning, number one. Number two, this 1,000 people are the smartest of the lot in the entire country. 1,000 of each year, combine that for the past 3-4 years, you have about 4,000, 5,000 of the smartest people in the entire country available with you. Now you can utilize to do few things. One, you can either build a bunch of products together, right? Build a bunch of products together and start launching them one by one. You are young, the audience, the amount of audience, the amount of consumer audience out there which has disposable income to spend in your age bracket, it has increased tremendously, right? And you have much more avenues to make money as well than what we had at our time. So if you build a product for your generation, for your 20s, people who are in their early 20s, for example, or late teens, there's a very vast majority of people where you can spend that product on, and you have enough audience, enough enough intellect in the campus right now to build a good product. So that way, if you want to be an entrepreneur, nothing beats the time right now. The companies who are winning the tide right now, or who have been winning the past decade, talk about Airbnb, talk about Uber, talk about Instagram, talk about Ola, talk about, I don't know, Flipkart, not Flipkart. Flipkart kind of grew after that, but yeah, originated a little earlier. All of these, if you talk about, they all originated in the time of recession. Pick 2000, same story. So whenever a recession or whenever a turning inflection point has come in the society, in the economics, in the economy, always very, very disruptive companies have emerged. And this is exactly what is happening right now. Nothing beats the time right now to start up. People might have been saying, all the VCs might have been saying in the past 10 years, startup karo, startup karo, startup karo, because paisa dalne hote hain. But honestly, as an entrepreneur who has been doing this since 12 years, I can tell you honestly that 2008 was the best time. This is the second best time to start up, to do all over again, because the kind of behavioral changes that are happening right now, if you enter it right now, you will perhaps the next Bhavish or the next Bhati. By the way, Bhavish and Bhati are also from Hostel 5. Good put. Right? You can maximize the learning by ensuring that you are collecting from everybody else. You know, you have a good pool of friends around you, and you're working on problems together. Nothing beats that. We did that. Me, Ankit, we used to do brainstorm and do whatnot. We used to think about a ton of things. Me and Ashok used to do the same thing. Ankit, Ashok, you can choose to.
I will add to earlier what you were saying, right? So I think there are like you need to determine your risk appetite, right? Like if you are willing, sometime back I read a very good article. I'm not sure if you guys have also read it about the risk appetite and disruption done by startups, right? That if as a startup you want to disrupt the market, that is a risky thing, right? Then as a entrepreneur or as an employee of any startup also, you should be willing to get disrupted also. So I think that's a like a give and take relationship, which I found really really interesting in that article, and that talked about there are a lot of companies who were thinking of changing the game, that how the lay of the land. If the lay of the land has actually changed in this pandemic, they should be they should be agile enough to see that what do they want to do in this new scenario, right? So I think with high risk, there is high gain, but obviously that risk is still there. So as Tali said, right, this is the right time to choose if you want to do a startup. I also believe that this is the right time, but then you should be wary of the risk, and you should own up those decisions which you are taking, that this is what you want to do. I think there are some questions about how to get to a perfect team. I think that's $1 billion question. If you get the answer to that question, loop me.
Okay. I think I will cover. I mean, all the people who are excited and enthused about, or even considering to start up or do something in startups. I mean, I can take those questions separately. I think that itself will take us, that deserves a separate discussion altogether. Especially given the times, I think starting up might be the best thing to do. But anyway, I am biased in that direction.
I just want to add a point here on the learning bit,
Yeah.
right? You very rightly mentioned that you have 4,000 of the best minds in the country on campus available at your disposal to brainstorm with, to think about, and that is one of the reasons you come to IIT, right? Because you want to be with the best brains in the country, and when you have this opportunity, make sure you're making the most use of it. The second thing I would also say, right, with technology, with platforms like LinkedIn, etc., it's so much easier to now figure out who are who are people who've actually traveled the journey that you are willing or you are envisioning yourself to travel. Do reach out to them, and as I've been saying in the chat as well, right, you have to make it worthwhile for them to engage with you in a meaningful way. If right now there are about 60 people on this call right now, if all 60 of you send me a LinkedIn connection and all 60 of you ask me for questions, I practically will not be able to answer for every 60 every individual. But if someone has actually done the research and asked me very specific questions where I know, yes, this person is genuinely interested, has done some research, worthwhile my investment as well, because this person is actually do something that will be meaningful, I will engage. So make sure you're using the alumni community as well. We often, as engineers, do not do that. In MBA, that is a very, very important part of the MBA equation, which is leveraged big time by all graduates. So make sure you're leveraging the alum community as well.
Correct. And I think one parting remark on that front is, trust me, after you get out of college, after you get out of IIT, you will crave to have the same amount of intellectual density around you. You'll crave for it, literally every day. You will you'll be beating your head against the wall that kahan phas gaya. IIT में इतना मजा आता था because there was always somebody to to bounce ideas off, because there are so many smart people all around you with so many different ideas. So on that front,
I
the next
this
very, very
is
pertinent problem.
I think this is very much linked to the imposter syndrome topic, which we are going to cover next, right? That you imposter syndrome is, I think, the best thing to have. That if you are in an environment where you are constantly learning from people around you, and you feel that others people around you are much more talented and much more gifted, that's the best thing to have, right? But it's up to you that how do you want to take it, right? If you take it positively and try to increase your skills based on that, it's a positive way to take it. So like, just to share you one of the things which we at Google follow while recruiting is that you should always recruit a person who is smarter than you, right? So that constantly keeps the bar high, and you are trying to find people who are smarter than you, right? And as you recruit more and more people like that, you at one point of time you start feeling that imposter syndrome, right? I feel it every day at work, because I learned from people who have joined 3 years, 4 years after me, people who have been there for 10 years more than me. So you learning can come from anywhere, and I think imposter syndrome is good to have.
True. I think. Okay. Go
Absolutely.
on.
So I would completely agree with Ankit on that, right? It's very good to have imposter syndrome, both from the perspective that it keeps you on your toes. Second, it also always keeps you humble, right? Uh, Most of us would have done very well in our school life, in probably even 11th, 12th, and we would feel very proud. You know, we are the best minds in the country. You come to IIT Bombay, and then you realize all 500 are equally good or probably better than me, or whatever 1,000 people are all good or better than me. Similarly, when you go to a job, you will realize that almost everyone is as good as you or probably even better. And that makes you stay humble, that keeps you focused that yes, you have to keep getting better. This is not the end game. No matter what people would have told you when you graduated from your 10th or 12th, you know, a lot of parents say that 2 saal aur pad lo, ho gaya. That is, trust me, that is not life. Life is all about learning every single day of your life. And having that imposter syndrome keeps you on your toes, keeps you learning every single day, because the moment you stop learning, you're going to fall behind.
Absolutely. I think so. Personally, okay, I have a slightly different contrarian view to this. I believe imposter syndrome. So when we say imposter syndrome, basically you constantly feel that you are not good enough. Um, I think it also leads to a lot of anxiety and stress, especially when you're not when you're surrounded by like 4,000, 5,000 of the smartest people around. You constantly have this doubt, self doubt that यार गलती से तो नहीं आ गया यहाँ पे. In your school, you were perhaps a topper, and you were perhaps the one person everybody used to come to you, come for to answer all the questions, and now you're struggling with your studies. I personally have seen people in CSP, people in elect, for example, uh, who even now we know that was depression. At that time, we didn't know that was depression. I know of people in my batch who were in CS or elect, for example. I'm particularly talking about those two departments because they're considered like the elite of the elite, right? Couple of them actually attempted suicide as well, and I personally know of that. Um, so I believe if look at yourself within that 5,000 people, yes, there's a good chance you're not good enough or as good enough as you thought you were for the first 16 years of your life. You're the smartest of the lot. You were Aankhon Ka Tara, Sharma Ji Ka Beta. You were the Sharma Ji Ka Beta, against which everybody was compared, right? And suddenly you are not that Sharma Ji Ka Beta anymore. There are other people who you are getting compared, or you yourself are compared. Your mummy is calling you, your daddy is calling you, and you're not scoring very well. And you, for the first time, you do not have words to explain that why am I not doing well. And you also know that how difficult it is for them to pay the fees and to put you in the college. And you constantly feel that मुझे काम करना है, मुझे पढ़ना है, लेकिन मैं पढ़ ही नहीं पा रहा हूँ, मैं कर ही नहीं पा रहा हूँ, etc., etc., etc. Honestly, there's no easy way out of this. I do not have a Ramban Ilaj to this. I can tell you one thing, that yes, I have felt it. and I felt it very deeply, uh, multiple times. Uh, right. I think one thing that matters the most in this is finding a group of friends that with whom you can be real, with whom you can share, and it's critical to share. Um, One thing, if I can go back to my college time, and if I can talk about things I could have done differently or I could have handled differently. So, good thing about me, at least when I was coping up with all of these things, as compared to some of my friends who were coping with the same problem, I was very headstrong about what I want to achieve, and I knew that I will be able to achieve it no matter all of this. But yes, it was always a battle with yourself as to, ये आसपास के लोग ये सब कर रहे हैं, what if I'm wrong? The question was, what if I'm wrong, right? The question was not if कि मैं किसी लायक नहीं हूँ. At least that was one saving grace for myself. If I didn't have that confidence in myself, I guess things would have been very, very different. I'll suggest two things. One, definitely find your friends, find your actual friends who are around you, not your wingmates. There's a good chance you into the wing. There's a good chance your wingmates are not actually your friends. They're around you, but they're not your friends. Find those people who are actually your friends, right? And I can say very happily that Ankit was my friend, Ashok was my friend. We were all together in our thick and thin. Things were bad with sometimes with Ashok, sometimes with Ankit, sometimes with me, and we were all kind of pooling in together and kind of surviving. This was not about competing, etc. Right? It's much more about that you need that help. Number one. Number two, and that is the hardest thing, and that is if I could express and if we could share all whatever is going with our family, if not with the family, because your mom is going to worry too much, your dad is going to worry too much. इतना पैसे, like हर किसी की family की अलग कहानी, right? In certain cases, parents might be supportive, certain cases, parents might not be supportive. Find somebody outside of college, very critical, outside of college, who is not your girlfriend or boyfriend, and I'm very serious about it, not your girlfriend or boyfriend, who can be supportive of you, who can be there with whom you can share, so that you can be normal human again. Inside the campus लगता है कि दुनिया इतनी ही है और इतने में मैं फिसड्डी रह गया हूँ, बैक बेंचर रह गया हूँ, मैं किसी लायक नहीं रह गया हूँ, तो आपको कुछ भी हो सकता है. You might be the best in the entire world, but yeah, in this structure of things, you might not be the best, right? So having an outside perspective will help you a lot. Sometimes your parents will give you, but you might question their perspective because आपने थोड़ा आइडिया किया है, आपको थोड़ा पता है, आपने थोड़ा मेरी जिंदगी जी है, तो आपको नहीं पता है, आप तो पुराने वाले हो, पुराने जमाने के हो, उस समय ऐसा चलता था, अभी नहीं चलता है. You will have that perspective. So having somebody in your age bracket or somebody senior, maybe your brother if you have good terms with him, or you can share these things with him, or somebody else, that is the perfect thing. And please do that. Even if you're the best of the breed, maybe you're a 9 pointer, 10 pointer, it doesn't really matter. These things affect you deeply. It has been 12 years, and I think I can say for both Ankit and Ashok, because we were having this chat some time back, वो imposter syndrome आज भी है. आज भी है कि there are always people smarter than you around you, right? Who will make you feel bad, who will make you feel inferior, and sometimes they are actually ghatiya people who are ahead of you a lot of times. Okay, like वाहियात people that you are like, ये कहाँ से यार, ये बंदा क्या कर रहा है, ये कैसे कर रहा है, right? But then hey, that is part parcel of life. You can't really, if politicians, and we know how politicians are, if they can run the country, come on. Right? So please find your support group. Talking it up and sharing with people, sharing with your friends is not a bad thing. If they are making fun of you or if they are taunting you, they are not your friends. Please distance immediately. It doesn't matter whether he was your best friend from Bachpan. If he is not able to understand you right now, he is not your friend. Please move away. Find those 5 people, find those 3 people, find those 6 people that can actually support you in and with whom you can be you can level up. Ashok, Ankit?
Absolutely, Talvinder. I think very, very brilliantly said. And it came right from the heart. I don't think any one of us could have put in it in a better way. And I take back my statement now, which I was talking about. It's good to have the imposter syndrome. It's everyone's journey. You figure out how much pressure you can absorb versus how much pressure is really actually going to bend you, right? What is your breaking point? You do not ever need to get to that breaking point. I was saying that maybe it's my personal experience, but I think what Talvinder said is a more broader, he summarized more broadly. You decide what is pressure enough for you to perform. If you think pressure is not right for you to perform, do not take that pressure, right? And if I look back now, the three of us when we are chatting, none of us is asking each other what our grades were 10 years back, right? Grades bhul gaye, matlab that is in the past now. No one is going to ask you 5 years, 10 years when you're into your job life, what was your third year CPI? It's all in the past. So, and if I compare, right, there are so many 5 pointers, 6 pointers who've probably done even better than me right now in their careers. So a CPI is not a good indication of how well you will do in your life. There will be both types of cases: good CPI folks who actually do very bad in corporate life, and there will be bad CPI cases who will do very good in corporate life, because the skills are also very very different, right? And some jobs require more softer skills, some jobs require more analytical skills. In IIT, we only look at the analytical skills. There is no mention of people skills, softer skills, right? And there are so many high paying jobs out there which actually focus only on the software element. Maybe you are good at that. Maybe you will excel at that. So you will find your own sweet spot. It's not the time to take pressure. Although if there is pressure on you, as Talvinder said, find those core group of people who are truly people you will cherish for the rest of the year. They are not people who you just want to hang out with when you're in your fun times, drinking beer or spending time. But these are people who you would want to hang out with when times are bad, both for you and for them. It has to be mutual both ways. Only then you're going to be able to manage the situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think plus one, it is really, really important to reach out, to speak out things and reach out to the right people, right? Because people whom you can trust, people with whom you can be comfortable and share. It is really important, and yeah, definitely the pressure levels which each person can handle are very, very different. And as I said, right, that I've seen people crying during placement season. People really, really like heartbroken because there was one company for which they were eyeing, and whole 5 years or 4 years they were preparing for that company, and it didn't happen, right? But I think it is really important to have big picture in mind, that what you actually want to achieve in life and what you want to do, and after 30 years or 40 years of career, when your most of the savings, as Ashok said, would be made in last 5-10 years, it would not matter that whether you got that job, whether you were promoted in that cycle, whether you got that branch or not. Just like I think I can share more of my journey to make emphasis on this point also. I was I'm not sure if you guys still use that term, Dhakkan of Meta branch. I was the last person to get that branch, right? IIT Bombay Meta. Otherwise, I would have been in metallurgy, Chennai, right? So I was the last person to get in IIT Bombay.
Ankit, on that note, I was almost the NC Dhakkan. I did not get there, though.
Right. So
we have data department at Dhakkan and we have NC ka Dhakkan together.
so I think I was the last person to get into IIT Bombay Meta, right? After that, I mean, in SPGen, I was the last person who got placed because I wanted to be in B2B, right? So there would be places where you will feel that things are not going according to your way, things are not going according to your like your vision. But I think it's okay. It's okay to have things being and similar to this pandemic situation, right? I'm sure that a lot of you guys would be in pressure of loans. A lot of guys would be in pressure of that this is the job which they wanted, or this is the country which they wanted to move to. But things would change. But again, these are temporary things. We are human beings. We will evolve out of it. We will survive these things, and we will keep living, right? So don't worry about these short term changes which are impacting your life.
Correct. I think so. With that note, I think I'll just share a little bit of my own story, and there's a song that I have. I'm not sure if that will be audible, but I'll play a song. I think that will perhaps help you.
I was scared that Tali would say, I'm going to sing the song. I was going to laugh off that.
Dude, I'm still very self-aware. Okay. So during college days, like I said, I was into core curricular activities, dance club, etc., a bunch of things. I got some offer from a Bollywood movie, I got selected as well. I decided not to go for it because it was third year and I was supposed to. I was asked to skip the semester, so I couldn't skip the semester. But once I got done with the college, I got involved in the movies and I did some of the stuff. I realized that's not the industry I enjoyed. It was horrible. It was a pretty shitty industry, and now kind of it's coming out also. Um, Good thing is I was able to navigate. I got a pretty awesome. I got into a pretty. I launched a company. Was able to scale it to about 1.5 million revenue within a couple of years. Sold it back. Launched another one. The second one grew up nicely, then went down, and then I was able to pick it back up. And I remember the down once again. The down was pretty bad. It was horribly bad. When it went down, I was literally like from 24, 25 people team, I had to bring it down to 2, 3 people team. And then we had to rebuild all over again. And I remember crying alone in the night. I remember that very, very well. And so when I take decisions now, it kind of reminds me of that. The point is, such shit is going to happen again and again in your life, irrespective whether you take up a safe job, you take a risky job, you launch a amazing startup, you launch a shitty startup. It doesn't fucking matter. I'm sorry, sorry, not allowed. It doesn't really matter. Okay, things are going to go bad. The point is, the sooner it goes bad, the more stronger you're going to emerge. So in a way, all of you are seeing the worst of the times, and so you will emerge very, very strong from this. Okay. So from my movie days, there's this one movie we were making on IIT, by the way, before Three Idiots got announced. So Three Idiots got announced, we were like, let it make it. We are going to lose all our by one of IIT Bombay alumni only. I'm not sure if it will be audible. I'm just going to play it. The second para is very, very relevant to what a lot of you are feeling. So I hope it will not bore you. I'm just going to play it right now. It's a small song. Is it audible?
Lyrics are not clear.
So no worries. If lyrics is not available, not legible, that's perfectly okay. I do not have the permission to actually share it in public. This is a song which was made for the movie, and it is with us. I'll share the lyrics outside of this separately. Okay, I think the main part of the song is all about that. Outside the campus, we were all the smartest of the lot. When we came in, we realized we are part of the herd. But in this herd, we found our friends. We found people with whom we'll spend the life. And I think that's the spirit of being at IIT, and that's the spirit of college. That's the song all about. But anyway, at this note, I think we can pause, and I think we have covered pretty much everything that you guys had questions about. If there are more questions, we can take up, I think, some more questions. I'm not sure if there's a time limit now. We were supposed to complete this in 1.5 hours, so we kind of made it. If there are more questions, happy to answer. So Vishwaraj, Sujit, I think there are a few other people who asked about products and companies and entrepreneurship, etc. I'm readily available. I can take a separate session on this, and I can talk about how you can build up products, be an entrepreneur, or build a profile in such a way. So despite not getting like the highest CPAs, for example, I was in the 6-pointer range. I was somewhere in that range. I don't even remember now. But I was straight out of the college. I was able to get myself salaries which were higher than the 8-pointers, 9-pointers. Right? How I was able to do it, I can share that, etc. I can share that later on. But yeah, I can take a separate session. You can reach out to me. I'm pretty accessible, right? But apart from those entrepreneurship questions, if there are other questions that people you want to address, you want to answer, not just about your career, not just about your thing, but if there's something personal or something pertinent, please feel free to share or ask.
And while the questions come in, Ali, I remember one of the things that was talked about was, where do you figure out that right balance in your career about work-life balance and money, etc. Right. So I think
Yeah,
there is
yeah.
no right answer to that. It is a very, very personal answer. A lot of people are satisfied getting a very decent amount of salary right at the start, and they are content with that. A lot of people are on the other extreme where money is the biggest motivator for them. So you really have to figure out what is it or what you do. And to be honest, that question I still haven't been able to answer for myself. I still keep asking this question to myself every single day, because as you keep going into different phases of your life, your priorities keep changing, your requirements keep changing, right? So there is no right answer, there is no standard answer to it. But the important point is to always keep asking that question, and as you go through different phases, just making sure that you are thinking about that and you are actively planning for it is something you do on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, there are a couple of questions coming. I think sorry, Ankit, go on.
Yeah, I was just talking about the questions only. Like one example which I can take, like push my careers back by years. Again, right? It depends. Like in longer term, in longer span of time, these things would not matter.
Uh, okay.
But if you see, like one example which I can give is when I was in Tata Steel, when I did my MBA, the salary which I got after MBA was a little lower than what I was getting in Tata Steel. And Tata Steel was in Jamshedpur, and where you don't the cost of living is very very low, right? And when you see the kind of living standard, like cost of living in Gurgaon, it was much higher, right? So I think if you and it was a 2 year MBA, right? So actually I was thrown back like 3 years or 4 years in my career, but the path from there was quite steep. So I think in long term, if you are taking the right decision to where you want to move, it's okay. Your career will not get pushed back until you are doing something which is illegal. So don't do that. That's strict no no.
Yeah, and I can add one incident from my career as well, right? So while I was in my first job, I think beyond a point, the learning had saturated, and I stuck around for too long. I stuck around for 2 extra years in hindsight than what I should have, and that's why I didn't get the right set of learning. And in some way, I can say that I was pushed back by 2 years, but I still did make decent amount of money in that time, so I wouldn't regret it. But it's something that if I had to do differently all over again, I would probably quit my first job much earlier as the learning had time.
And just to take up the second question, which is their suggestions on getting better at teamwork, group at IIT are give up. Wait till you do MBA. The groups which you see in MBA, and I can see that Ashok can also relate from his MBA experience. The groups which you will get in MBA would be much much worse. I think the group work at IIT was pretty awesome.
Pretty awesome.
As compared to what was the experience in MBA, right? I think it depends on you. I think it again player versus victim approach. That it, obviously there are certain external circumstances which you cannot avoid, but I think what is the end goal of that group is something which you should keep in mind, whether the task which you want to get done in a certain time, and how do you motivate and emerge as a leader without authority is something which you constantly learn, right? And that's the best way to do teamwork. That's my opinion. Ashok, if you want to
And to add to Ankit's point, right? As he said, MBA groups are way more give up compared to IITB, and you will face the same thing in your corporate life as well,
yeah.
right? When you're doing a job, you're part of a team. Team maybe 4, 5, 10 member team, right? There will always be it's normal distribution. You will always good people, bad people, right? And it's about how you manage with what is thrown at you. So use this as a learning opportunity, because this is going to be constant in your life. No matter what field you get into, you'll always find people who are not maybe as motivated, may not be as competent, but then you still have to work along together. So I would say use that as a learning opportunity.
Correct. And I think, the good thing here is, to be very honest, in the entire campus, there's so many people. Perhaps you're not in the right group, right? Because I think you should be able to find three, four pretty smart, pretty enthu in your own way, enthu janta. Like I have not seen, and it's been 12 years, and I've built teams after teams after teams. I can say very confidently that I have not seen that amount of diversity that we see in IIT. Like, you want to do some really random, odd game you want to play, you will find three people who want to play the same game, right? You will not find that outside. Yeah. Because the weirdest thing you want to do, you will find somebody in campus who would like to do with you. So I would refuse to believe that you do not find your own bandwidth people. I refuse to believe that. I think you're not looked enough. Okay, please do that. I have one more point about the balance of peace and whatnot. I think, see, making money right now would be the top priority for most of you, right? Because you've never seen money, so you would definitely would want to make money. When you do not quantify your goals, you end up chasing it like a maniac or a maniac, right? You'll continuously chasing it. कि भाई पैसे कमाने हैं, पैसे कमाने हैं, पैसे कमाने हैं, पैसे कमाने हैं. कितने कमाने पता नहीं, लेकिन कमाने हैं. So if you go with that attitude, you will not be able to achieve anything, or you will not be able to actually meaningful make a milestone and tell yourself that you're doing okay. That's also important. Telling yourself that you're doing okay. So for example, let's say you want to make 12 lakhs. Let's say that's your goal. So can you actually sit down, just spend a day? You all are pretty smart, high on energy. You don't need Red Bulls like us right now to keep up, right? So if you just spend one day, can you come up with 5 ideas on how you can make a lakh rupees right now? What are different opportunities, different ways in which you can do it? There are 1,001 ways that you can do it, to be very honest. If you can't come up with it, that's perfectly okay. Give me a buzz and we can brainstorm together. Okay? But there are plenty of ways in today's age that you can make a lakh rupees for yourself on your own, perhaps on the side as well. Okay? I can understand right now this might sound very funky. MLM तो नहीं करवाने वाले हैं, नहीं, MBA के products नहीं बेचने हैं, आप actually कुछ बना सकते हो, कुछ कर सकते हो. It's relatively simpler to actually make that kind of money. You just need to know, and you need to orient yourself in that direction. Okay? Once you have that in mind, then it becomes very easy. अच्छा, मुझे अकेले रह के अगर मैं खुद से गांव में रह के अगर 1 लाख रुपए कमा सकता हूँ, तो इतना टेंशन लेना क्यों है? इधर टेंशन लेना क्यों है? इतने पंगे लेने क्यों है? आराम से जाके बैठ के काम करते हैं. And that is, if for some of you, perhaps that might be the best way to do it. Okay, there are a few more questions. I'll quickly answer some of them. And okay, IIT tag does matter because it will open door for you. उसके बाद क्या करते हो रूम में घुसने के बाद, that is on you. But it at least open door for you. So appreciate the fact that you are from IIT Bombay and that is opening up doors for you. But beyond that, also live up to that expectation that if you do not do your job well, or if you behave unprofessionally, unethically, etc., then you are also closing the door for a bunch of other people. Right? So please live up to that. Then there was a question on how relevant are Insti, POR, and other things in developing yourself. Tremendously impactful. If you are taking up some responsibilities, you are driving certain agendas, that will help you a lot. Honestly, what I got made today, that wouldn't have happened if in the first year I didn't launch InSync. In the second year, I didn't launch AIDS. In the third year, I didn't become the first Institute Branch Secretary. I confidently can tell you that वो ये सब चीजें नहीं होती. Fourth year में me and Ashok ने मिलकर पहली बार डिपार्टमेंट का, एरोस्पेस डिपार्टमेंट का फेस्ट को ना इंस्टीट्यूट का फेस्ट बना दिया था. So we can, otherwise department fest used to be very small, right? Very छोटू सा activity, something happening in the corner. But we decided कि नहीं, अपन कर रहे हैं कुछ बड़ा करेंगे. And we decided to get क्या नाम है उसका astronaut का Ashok?
Sunita Williams. I remember Tali and I were sitting and we were wondering यार किसको बुला सकते हैं if we want to make it big, and we just wrote down random high profile names. We said why not aim for the best, and we actually got it. So
yeah, we got Sunita Williams in the campus for a department festival, right? So all of these things, every single year जो हमने किया, that enabled us to actually become better people. It enabled a lot, right?
just to add to that, right? The post is not about a CV point. The post is about it's giving you the opportunity to learn a new skill. And that is how you need to approach it. You don't need to say that मेरे को एक CV point मिल गया. It's about what you learn during that. CV point तो ठीक है, मतलब everyone will have their own versions of the CV point, but what you make out of it is going to be the most critical part.
Somebody has asked, IIT Tech helps equally MTech and BTech. It helps everyone. IIT Bombay has a certain value amongst all the IITs also. It has certain brand value, and it does definitely opens up. People would want to speak to you. They would at least open up the door that, hey, IIT Bombay ka banda, chal baat karte hain. I was in area about, I think, couple of years back. I think 2018 late. I was there, and जब भी वहाँ जाता हूँ, when I approach somebody saying that, hey, I'm from IIT Bombay, even if they are not from IIT, they will listen to me, or they will at least give me a chance to speak, simply because they have seen a lot of IIT Bombay alumni doing incredibly well in that area, right? So that helps in this way. Plus, I've been able to connect to people who graduated in 70s, 80s, simply saying कि अच्छा IIT Bombay का है, अपना बच्चा बात करते हैं, right? So you have an incredible alumni network, which is always going to be willing to help you out in all ways possible. Just make sure that when you're reaching out, when you're seeking out for help, be a little more precise, be a little more clear about what you want. If you're not clear, say so. यार मैं clear नहीं हूँ, मुझे उसी की help चाहिए. मैं clear नहीं हूँ. Can you spend like 15 minutes with me? That will also help.
To add to what Tali was saying, right? In fact, I just started a new project this Friday, 2 days back. There was another colleague, and when we were introducing each other, we both realized we are from IIT Bombay. And initially, before that introduction, it was a little very, very, very formal. And after that, we connected. We had a separate call. We chatted for an hour and a half, catching up on Insta Live, department, all of that. And now it's a very different working relationship because you have certain commonalities that have now come to the fore and you can relate to each other's background. Having said that, IIT tag is not the only means towards your end, right? It is one of the things that will help you. But do not rest on the laurels saying कि मेरे को IIT tag मिल गया, I am set for life. That is the starting point. You've gotten an advantage over others. At the same time, you need to keep building your career. It's a 30-year-long journey. This is a good advantage you have at the start, but do not lose that advantage.
Absolutely. I think one statement that I will add to what Ashok is saying as pretty much at the conclusion of this entire chat. After 2 years, 3 years of graduating from the college, your biggest achievement should not be that I cracked JEE. In your resume, your first point should not be I was the 0.01% of the people who attempted JEE. That should not be your biggest achievement. Plan for that. Don't plan for the 10 years. Plan for just that कि मैं ऐसा क्या करूं 2 साल के बाद IIT के कि मेरी खुद की पहचान थोड़ी बहुत बन सके. और JEE क्रैक करना should not be my only big achievement. Right? There's one last question I think which is pertinent, which is what do you think it is better to be jack of all trades or to be master of one? Honestly, master of one का time जा चुका है overall, not just in crisis but overall. Master of one रहोगे, that time जा चुका है. Jack of all trades रहना is much more advantageous in general, especially now, where pretty much anything that you're doing is intermingled with something else. तुम sales करो तो मैं फिर भी AI की जरूरत है. तुम AI करो तो भी तुम्हें soft skills जरूरत है. तुम कुछ भी करो तो तुम्हें दूसरे स्किल की जरूरत है. वो टाइम जा चुका है when you just needed one skill and you can survive for the rest of your life. You need to have a cross-functional roles. You need to have soft skills. You cannot be an asshole and you can win. वो टाइम भी काफी हद तक जा चुका है. And we are seeing that all around us. Right? People are much more vocal about all of this. So you cannot be asshole and you can save yourself. I wonder if Steve Jobs was still alive, would have things been the same as he was back then, right? It's a controversial statement to make, but I think that is the fact. So you need to build that jack of all trades thing. I was jack of all trades. I did everything possible. I designed, I coded, I did bloody anything that came my way. Right? And I'm very happy with that. कि मुझे पता था कि यार कुछ तो कर ही लूंगा. पता नहीं क्या होगा. Right? Ashok, Ankit,
yeah. The only thing I completely agree with. Sorry, Dali, you were saying something.
No, I'm just saying that this can be a very good good point to end the entire discussion with.
Absolutely.
No, go on, Ashok. Please go ahead. Go ahead, Ashok.
Nahi,
Please.
I was just going to add one more point to what you just mentioned, right? As Tali said, एक skill set से you're not going to make a career, right? You may succeed for 1, 2, 3 years at max. Beyond that, you yourself may get bored of the job. The industry will evolve in such a way that your skills will be completely irrelevant. You don't want to be that person, right? And I don't know how many of you guys have read about businesses, but take the classic example of, let's say, a Nokia or a Kodak. Kodak was the number one camera player for like decades and decades. All of a sudden, one go, they didn't focus on digital camera, they were out of the market. Same with Nokia. I don't know how many of you guys had ever used a Nokia phone, but during that college days, Nokia was the most,
Coolest thing.
coolest thing on campus. So all of us had Nokia phones, and then all of a sudden iPhone came, BlackBerry came, and they transformed the business. So if you're not relevant, if you don't keep yourself updated, you are going to become irrelevant in a very, very short span of time before you even realize it. Having said that, the only other point I would want to make is do not stretch yourself too thin that you are trying to learn all the skills. You will not be able to do that practically. Focus on 3, 4, 5 core skills and get to the depth of it. So breadth as well as depth is equally important because people are going to value the depth you bring to the table. Breadth बहुत लोगों के पास आ सकता है just by reading a few articles, just by attending a few courses. So keep that balance of breadth and depth.
Right. Ankit, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, no, I think you guys have covered everything on that front. Okay.
Awesome. So with this, let's pause. And Divyashri, that's all we have to share for now.
Oh, yeah, that was a really, really good session. Thank you so much. It was really enlightening and insightful. Thank you, Ashok, Talvinder, and Ankit once again. So I guess all of the questions and all the doubts that the students had have been covered and answered sufficiently. So once again, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having
much.
us.
All of you guys have been quite engaging, and I wish you all a very, very happy, successful career in your life. Trust me, this is a minor blip. We will all tide over it, and year, 2 years down the line, we'll actually be, depending upon your alcohol of choice, you will be sipping that and sitting back and saying, "यार, ये भी देख लिया और मतलब अब तो क्या ही हो सकता है."
Oh, I really hope.
Correct. And those who want to reach out, I'm pretty accessible. You can find me on LinkedIn. I have just dropped my email on the chat. So if you want to reach out, feel free to reach out and ask any question perhaps that you cannot. So, Yagna, you're asking about UPSC. Honestly, none of us tried for UPSC. Some of my friends did. So thoda sa, we are short on that agenda, but we have friends who have done that. So if you want to connect with somebody, perhaps we can try helping you get connected. Who went through UPSC, got into IAS, IPS, etc. We can connect you with. Okay. Take care. It was lovely speaking to all of you. Kind of helped us feel younger again. A little bit. अभी भी young है, लेकिन थोड़ा और young हो गए.
You don't visit the campus.
Correct.
It was really
Chalo,
great
take
having
care.
you guys on board.
Thank you. See you. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.